Welcome to another edition of Gold Bazan. It's an absolute pleasure for me to today be talking to Mr. Maher Mezahi. If you know Maher Mezahi's work, you know he's just an expert on football, just when it comes to African. And he's a huge fanatic of African football. And it was great to get a discussion about him about Iran's upcoming matches against Tunisia and Algeria. So Maher will give us pretty much an in-depth discussion about the likes of Tunisia and Algeria, how those teams will, pretty much play against Iran, how Iran could benefit them. And, we're just looking forward to just this discussion having with them. So, as always, we appreciate the support. We hope you enjoyed this latest episode of Gold Bazan. Thank you. Hi folks, welcome to another edition of Gold Bazan. It's an absolute delight for us to be joined by Maher Mezahi. Maher, thank you so much for your time, all the way from Algeria. It's very late night, but for you to come on Gold Bazan is an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you for coming on. How are you doing tonight?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. I'm home alone. My wife left for she's on vacation, so it's you guys that are keeping me company tonight. So I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Even better, so now we won't have any intrude if you want to talk about footy for a little bit, so that's always a plus.
Exactly.
Maher, the first question I have for you is Iran is playing two matches, leading up to the World Cup, and it's two key matches that I would say that potentially how crucial of a match, we'll have against Morocco, and that really will decide, honestly, if we win that, if we're going to advance or not, depending, obviously, on other circumstances as well. First match will be, Amar could correct me if I'm wrong, March 23rd in Tunisia, and on the 27th we're playing Algeria on the 27th. So we'll be talking about both of these nations with Maher. Maher, it's, like Iran, Tunisia, the last time they were, fifth appearance in the World Cup, just like Iran, but last time they were in the World Cup was in 2006, so it's been a long time, and it must be something huge for the nation. I know they topped, Group A, but could you guys give us a little bit of a background in Tunisia's World Cup qualification leading up to the World Cup?
Yeah, so they actually, believe it or not, they kicked off qualifications in Algeria because they had Libya in their group, and Libya didn't play any of their matches at home because of the ongoing security concerns back home. So they actually kicked off their campaign here in Algeria against Libya. So it was supposed to be Libya's home match, and they got a really gritty 1-0 win away from home in a stadium that was half filled with Libyan supporters and the other half filled with Tunisian supporters. And really that sort of set the tone and defined the rest of their qualifying campaign. This is a team that's not going to wow you by the way they play football, not like the sort of Algeria 2014 style, the attacking side that sort of took the world by storm. This is going to be a very pragmatic side, and I've used that so much to describe Tunisia over the past 2-3 years. But it really is. The intangibles are what defines this team. We're talking about grit. We're talking about team spirit and tenacity. And I think a lot of the times those are superlatives from clueless pundits like myself. But I really do think it's the case here. And if you ask any Tunisian player, they'll tell you the same thing. So they played that match, they won, and they got off to a quick start. And after that, they beat Guinea at home. Tunisia's home record has always been very good. But the one match that really defined the qualification campaign was against DR Congo. DR Congo is a team that has Yannick Bolasie. It's a team that I believe finished in the final four of I think two of the last three Cup of Nations. I might have had that wrong, but at least one of them for sure. So they're a very they're a team that haven't been to the World Cup in a long time, and they're a team that everybody was tipping to go to the World Cup. So it was going to be a show off between Tunisia and the DRC, and Tunisia. They went to go play in the DRC, and they were losing 2-0, and with I think 15 minutes left, they came back and equalized 2-2. And again, it's that grit and that tenacity that helped them come back there in Kinshasa, and that match was what put it over the edge. And from there, they were confident that they were going to qualify.
Maher, you're speaking right now about, Tunisia's pragmatic approach, and that's something, Iran's manager has been doing, and it's been working. I would say it's more like in the Portuguese style of play, to be honest, with that pragmatic approach. When you're saying pragmatic approach, do you mean like, being defensively compact and countering, or pragmatic approach in another sense of footballing stuff from Tunisia?
Yeah, exactly. You're right on to actually push me on that. Look, to tell you that they play a specific formation, they don't. The coach played different variations with 3 or 5 at the back, and then 4-3-3s into 4-4-2s. He's played all kinds of formations. He's tested all kinds of different players, and there hasn't really been a clear identity. Some matches they dominate possession, but I think what we're going to see from Tunisia here is that you're going to see uh, the vast majority of their players. Before this recent exodus in January, the vast majority of their players play in Tunisia. So these are players that know each other. And these are players with a lot of experience as well. So you could talk about the goalkeeper, Ayman Bilbouli. You could talk about the defenders like Ayman Abdenour or like midfielders like Amin Ben Amour for Gianni Sessi. They all have 40, 50 caps. They know each other. They play against each other 2-3 times per year. And they've been playing together on this national team for 4 or 5 years. So if you ask me for a playing style, again, it kind of depends match by match. But they're very strong defensively, and their fullbacks do bring an attacking. They do help in attack. You have Hamdi Neguez, who plays for one of Egypt's 2 biggest clubs, Zamalek, on the right, and you have Ali Maloul, who plays for the other Egyptian giant, Al Ahly, on the left. And you can expect those two to push up and really help. They're 2 of Africa's best fullbacks, even though they're not very well known around the world. And you can expect them to push up and help the attack. So attacking through the width and getting the ball to the star man, Youssef Msakni. Youssef Msakni, again, another name that maybe in Europe we don't really know. But in Africa, he's a superstar. He's been performing at the Cup of Nations for the last 2, 3, 4 editions. And he's been incredible this qualifying campaign. He plays for the richest team in Qatar. He's, I think, 2nd leading scorer in Qatar. He's on a crazy contract. He's making crazy money in the Gulf. So you put the ball in his hand. You put the ball at his feet rather, and he's going to make something happen. So strong defensively, attacking through the width, and using Youssef Msakni in attacking axis.
Talking about, defensively wise, that's something that, how Iran has been doing such a phenomenal job under Carlos Queiroz. The team spirit, the tenacity, the resilience, and whatnot. And I think, going to this match, I'm really interested to see, how much this is going to benefit Iran. And we're going to talk about Morocco in a bit, how this will relate, Maher, is that when you're talking about how good are they defensively, are you saying that potentially they're better defensive side than Morocco is? Because Morocco did such a phenomenal job, defensively in that sense. And, with the style of play Hervé Renard has, they're very similar, interesting to Iran. And I think it's going to come all down to tactics, But now looking at this, what sort of, positive and negativities could you say that Iran could take out of this match, and how much of a beneficial playing against Tunisia is to beat the likes of Morocco?
I think this match would have been more beneficial if it was sort of like a continental, like if Iran was going to play Morocco in a continental qualifier somehow, because, where they would have to play in Morocco, which has a similar climate to Tunisia. So, they could get used to playing in North Africa. But at the World Cup, look, both sides are strong defensively. That's true. Yeah. But Morocco is much, much, much stronger defensively. That's a side that hasn't conceded a goal throughout the World Cup qualifying campaign. Right. Again, I might be wrong about this, but I think they're the only national team to have done that. And they're a team that defend with all 11 men. Tunisia don't really do that very well. Morocco make things so compact, the ball never really gets behind defenders. It can happen on occasion with Tunisia. So Morocco are a much better side than Tunisia. But they do sort of lack a really good striker, both sides, and they do both rely on their creative outlets. So their creative attacking midfielders, like Youssef Msakni, and Morocco will rely on Hakim Ziyech. So there are similarities. I think it's a good match. If I was head of the Iranian FA, I probably would have booked this friendly as well. But what do you think? Do you think it's really? You think it's really helpful to book these kinds of friendlies before a World Cup, 3, 4 months ahead of a World Cup? Sorry to interrupt again, but no. I honestly think Tunisia is going to bring 6, 7 new players that they're going to test. Iran might do the same. Maybe try a few different tactical schemes, but I don't know how helpful they're going to be as a sparring partner. You know what I mean?
No, of course. End of the day, both managers have to select a 23-man team. And this is a good way. Especially in Iran, one of the interesting things that we have that has been a revolution under our manager, Carlos Queiroz is that the amount of players of the team spirit that they leave Iran to show themselves, and play for these European clubs, to get the chance to get called up to the national team. A lot of players that I wouldn't even expect that have done that, they've done so, and one of them being Maher Mezahi, that he was playing for Esteghlal last season, which is a major club in Iran as a striker, and he's right now playing in Belgium for one of Charlie Loy, if I'm not mistaken, pronouncing it probably wrong, but he's been phenomenal. So point being is, it's good because you have a mixture of European players with the strength of, the Iranian players within Iran. And what Carlos Queiroz is trying to do is trying to bring that level of tenacity of the Iranian players that are playing in the Iranian league up. So I think that will benefit him, playing with the likes of Tunisia. Now looking back into how this relates with Morocco is that end of the day, and Carlos Queiroz even has mentioned before, our match against Morocco is a World Cup final, right, Maher? Because pretty much if we don't win that match, the odds of us advancing is slim. Let's just put it that way. So if we do potentially beat Morocco, we do have a chance, and that's how it's everything in for us right now for this World Cup is that first game. It's do or die. So to have play against such as you said, Tunisia, that correlates with Iran in the sense that they're very tough to score on. That's a beneficial for us. They're not up to the standards of Morocco, but it helps. And on the other hand, when we're playing a style of position style, attacking style of football that Algeria plays, that sort of correlates not only with the African roots, but also you could look at we're playing the likes of Spain, for example. I'm not saying obviously Algeria is the like of Spain, but it correlates. And let's not forget, this is an Iranian team that 4 years ago could not have these friendlies matches, if that makes sense. And I think that was a big issue we had. Now we have the likes of Tunisia and Algeria play. Who wouldn't, especially consider with the Iranian Federation and, the trouble with politics internally and, outside of Iran and, the funding. This is the best we could do, and this is something that I think every fan is really appreciated, if that makes sense, But what I'm trying to, as obviously Tunisian fans or Algerian fans, they might not know much as, about Iranian football as much as Iranian football fans might not know about Tunisia. Right now we're going to talk about Algeria pretty soon. But Maher, from what I've just told you, right, how would you see this matchup benefiting just not only Tunisia, but Iran from what I've just told you?
Like I said, Tunisia are bringing 6 or 7. I believe they'll bring 6 or 7 new players in the squad. They've already convinced a lot of their players from the diaspora to come back and play for the Tunisian national team. So there was Moaz Hassan, who's a goalkeeper at Nice. There's Saifuddin Khawi, who's a midfielder at Troyes. There's I'm missing a few others. Yohan Ben Alwan, a defender for Leicester City. These are players that had previously, Elias Khiri as well, midfielder for Montpellier. These are players that had previously either snubbed the Tunisian national team or said that, they're not ready yet. And now they have that golden ticket to the World Cup and they've come in their droves to come play for the Tunisian national team. So there was a big debate in Tunisia on whether these players should be given the opportunity to represent Tunisia in Russia. It looks like the Tunisian Federation are going to recoup these talents and test them in these friendlies. So that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest benefits for Tunisia playing in this match and then in their match against Costa Rica on the 27th of March. And for Iran, I don't know if it's going to be the same thing. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of players coming in that the coach wants to test. But I think you're right in pointing out that it's going to be a cup final for both sides, for Morocco and for Iran at the World Cup. And I think Tunisia are kind of similar to Morocco. So I think in these kinds of matches, these matches that are stalemates, that are 0-0s, and that are going into the dying seconds, it's going to be that final quality it's going to be the details, the little bit of quality that makes a difference. And I wanted to ask you if you think that your Iranian, especially your attacking players, the ones that are going to have 1, 2, 3 chances the entire match and that are going to have to convert one, do you think you guys have that quality to put the game to bed in the final moments?
Yeah, the thing with unfortunately that Iran has always struggled is that we have the talent, but it also comes down to the pragmatic counter style of play. We have the players. Right now, one of the top talents right now, it's arguably in the Eredivisie, is who's the best player right now in the league is Ziyech or Jahan Bakhsh of Azad Alkmaar. Jahan Bakhsh, has made a name for himself, not only right now in Asian football. Right now, he's doing it really pretty much in Holland. From, when he left Iran, he was playing for NEC. He got signed by Azad Alkmaar 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's making a name for himself. Now, he's potentially our right winger, right? Then we have obviously Sardar Azmoun, as you know, another big talent of ours, the striker that, last year he lit things up on fire in the Champions League, scored in the lights of Atletico Madrid, Bayern Munich when he was playing for Rostov, and he's someone that, in Asian football is a huge name. He had a lot of offers in Europe, but hopefully after this World Cup he'll make a higher move so people will be familiarized with him. And then another player that we know we've recently signed, and as you might know, his name is Salman Ghodus. He grew up in Sweden. I believe that if Iran didn't chase him, he would have, decided to play for Sweden. And you see, that's another player that right now there's a lot of question marks on where he's gonna fit in. So Iran, yes, Iran does have the talent and everything. But the issue is, with these style of play that we want to play, Iran doesn't score as much goals, if that makes sense. We're not going to go into the World Cup knowing we're going to score, And I think that's the key thing that, I'm looking forward to. And I think even the guys at the podcast would say that, how are we going to get the best out of these guys, and especially with a high defensive, team that Morocco is. And ironically, Iran is a very strong team defensively in Asia.
Right.
And last game was the only game we got conceded on. That was just 2 goals from Syria, ironically. So how are we gonna score a goal against this side of Morocco? And I think that's the reason why this Tunisia game now, from what you're telling me, and it makes more sense now. Obviously, we're all football people, but as much as African football might not be such a particular place for every football fan would see, or even when it comes to Asian football. So this is why it's a good discussion to have with you to learn more from various regions. Is that it's gonna benefit Iran? How are we gonna break that team down because they're sort of similar to Morocco, and yes, Iran does have a chance, but it's just a matter of fact that with the pragmatic approach we're gonna have and the way Morocco is gonna play. How are we gonna set up against them? And I believe.
But that's why it's so important to score when the opportunity is presented to you, because exactly. In that Morocco-Iran match there's going to be very, very few opportunities to score, and when that opportunity does come, and it will come, which side is going to convert that scoring chance? I think that's who's going to make the difference.
You see, and then another thing is with coming that that I just want to say when we look at that match is that who's going to be the team that is willing to be more open. And I honestly think it's gonna be Iran from what I've with discussions I've had, with people about Morocco, and so I believe it's gonna be more Iran willing to sacrifice that. But then again, it's gonna come maybe down to more set pieces than an open play. But it's interesting, and I think this Tunisian side not only will help Iran, but themselves too. We have a question from Twitter, Maher, and it's from at AMRN Famai. I'm sorry if I maybe pronounced that wrong. It says, if Iran are to benefit from facing Tunisia, as they will play Morocco and Russia, what benefits can the Carthage Eagles have from this friendly, since none of their World Cup group rivals looks like Iran? I'm just doing it from top of my head, so I'm sorry if, because correct me, Mar, if I might be wrong. I believe they are playing Belgium, England, it's obviously Tunisia and Panama, right? So what I think, Maher, is that first of all, I believe with the difficulties the Tunisian Federation has, this is the best game they could do, because they're up against the best Asian team, right now currently, and there's no question about it. With what Carlos Queiroz has done with the compact defensive approach they have, which it goes back to the counter-attacking thing, I think that will give Tunisia a better sense of how they'll benefit by that, is that, if they want to play with the likes of, Belgium and England, to have a very physical team is going to benefit them, that by itself, because England is much more of a physical team than Belgium. Belgium, as much as they have a lot of physical players, are very technical as opposed to England, right? And another thing we got to look at that I believe that's going to benefit them, I believe Panama, like Iran, and I don't know much about Panama, but I'm pretty sure against the likes of Tunisia, they're going to be much more defensive. So that's another thing they'll benefit from. If they're going to try to break down Iran's defense, Panama's going to be doing the same thing. And not only that, they're going up against, a Carlos Queiroz side that has a lot of fire, a lot of physicality, a lot of emotions, and that by itself will show them and maintain that kind of composure. If they're trying to bring that willingness into the game, they got to give it all against the likes of Iran, with the way, if you want to beat Iran, whether it's a friendly or whatever. So they got to do the same against the likes of, Belgium and England. So I would say in the terms of, physicality, playing a team that is plays so compact and does so well against a counter-attacking side like Iran is, will just be beneficial greatly to them. So as much as they're not playing against an Asian side and it's kind of dubious, with how things might play out with Iran. But they're playing against the best Asian team there is right now, and that by itself is crucial to them.
Yeah, it's an interesting question from Ahmed Fahmy. He's a journalist for BN Sports. Is one of the biggest African names. So it's always nice to get a question from him. Um, when it comes to Tunisia, what they stand to benefit from this match, I think I haven't seen enough of Panama to really know
Because I
if
think they'll
they play
park
a
the
similar
bus,
kind of
yeah.
style to Iran. But I'm assuming that Tunisia are doing the same thing, and they're picking a country that's in Central America. That they've picked Costa Rica in their second friendly match. So I think that's the match that they're going to sort of pair up with the Panama match as preparation. Um, but I think what they're really going to use this match for, and we sort of touched up on it, is to test players. They're
Hmm.
bringing in again 5, 6 new players, and the coach is going to be testing them. And this is going to be their big chance. If they're good enough during these 2 March friendlies, they'll probably be in the squad come June. If they aren't good enough, then obviously the World Cup is not for them. But I wanted to ask you actually about that as well. Like
Yeah.
in Iran, is there a big debate about like players that haven't played the qualification campaign playing in the World Cup? Is that a debate or no?
In what sense are you exactly saying that the players they just because they weren't part of the qualification process, why they might get called up, opposed to the players that were part of the qualification that didn't get a call up, like that kind of debate?
Exactly. Exactly. Especially, I don't know if you guys have players in the diaspora. You mentioned a player from Sweden.
Yeah.
Players that for in North Africa, it's mostly from France, Spain, Holland, maybe Belgium. These are players that were maybe waiting for a call up from the other side, and when they didn't get it, and now that they see the World Cup is coming, they decide, okay, they're opportunists. Now's the time to play for this North African national side. Now that they're going to play the World Cup, and sometimes it really messes up team chemistry. So I wanted to ask you if that was a problem as well in Iran.
No, it's definitely not been a problem. Thankfully, with the interesting thing with Iranian football, from this is just my own perspective, is that when it's a coach of Iran, there's a 50-50 morale amongst the players. 50% of the team likes him, and 50% they don't like him. But interesting with under Carlos Queiroz, these guys would walk on fire for the guy, if that makes sense. In the sense that the sense of team spirit amongst the players have not only just been something that I've never seen in my lifetime so far with Iranian national team, but how much they'll fight for Carlos Queiroz. So there's not, and with the players he's always selected, these are the players he trusts, if that makes sense. And it's not, you won't, there might be one or two surprises, because of how well some of our other players are doing in Europe, and now it's a toss up between who he's gonna call. But I don't think right now in Iran we'll definitely have a problem in the sense that the players that he's used in the qualifications, most likely going to be half of those teams, if that makes sense. Majority of those players that he's been part of the qualification process, he's probably going to call up. Maybe one or two of them are going to be kind of shockers in the sense that, somehow these players that you would have never even thought of potentially making the team, they possibly do because of how well, they've done in their trials pretty much. But Iran doesn't have that issue, Mar, in the sense that, how would I say that, that all of a sudden there's a huge debate of why Carlos Queiroz hasn't called up this player and whatnot. The team that he's selected right now throughout the qualification process is pretty much near close to the team that he's going to take to
Okay. Okay.
to the
Yeah, that
World
makes
Cup.
sense.
And I think that really has to do with why this team chemistry has gotten so highly. Our captain, Anjanik Teimourian, unfortunately because of the situation we had with Iranian leagues and stuff, clubs and stuff like that, as much as Queiroz loves the guy and he's a veteran, he hasn't gotten a call up. He was part of the qualification process, I would say maybe for 1 or 2 matches, but right now he's gone missing and that goes on to show you that he's not scared to get rid of big names, and he's done it with
Right.
two of our big players way back in the day when he first started with Mehdi Rahmati. Arguably, I would still say he's the best goalkeeper in Iran, and our former captain Hadi Aghili, because they didn't fight for the badge and he just got rid of him. So he's a kind of a guy that he doesn't care how big of a name you are. If you're not gonna willing to fight for the badge, he's gonna get rid of you.
Well, can I ask you about him because he's
Yeah.
been linked to the Algerian national team job on 2 previous occasions, and there were lots of reports that he was fairly close to getting it, and he's always been a personality that's really respected here,
Yeah.
obviously for his ties with Manchester United, but also
Yeah.
because he speaks so many different languages and he's
Yeah.
coached in so many different parts of the world. So if you could just, like, for example, tell me somebody that doesn't know anything about Carlos Queiroz, could you give me like a 60-second breakdown of him? Just
Yeah, of
like
course. For view listeners that are listening to this, is that listen, Carlos Queiroz is actually African. He actually was born in Mozambique. I don't know if you knew that or not. And he has coached not only in America. I believe it was Metro Stars. Like he's coached in Japan, Nagoya Stars. He's coached South Africa. He's in 1999. He's coaching UAE. He was Sir Alex Ferguson's, at Manchester United's assistant coach, which is a big part of why United during 2008 won the Champions League and the league, because of how well Carlos Queiroz worked with the players when it came to defensively discipline. And he's really shaped this team discipline. Iranian players, I would say now, are more technically aware thanks to this guy. Interesting enough, in Iran, a lot of our players, we have the talent, but we don't have the coaches to tactically prepare them, if that makes sense. And he's brought another revolution in the sense of how well he does. He's a tactical genius. I just want to put it this way, Yes, I remember he was linked to Algeria, and whatnot, but obviously, I just feel like those reports are just, stuff that you would expect. Honestly, with how big of a name is. He's been linked to many other, countries as well. But to give people, if African listeners are listening to this and they don't know much about Carlos Queiroz, is that he's a revolution. He's not only was assistant coach at United, he coached in Real Madrid. He was a coach of Portugal back in 2010. So he has a vast amount of experience. And one thing that one of our guys told me about, which is very interesting, and I think, Mar, this is going to be something that you're going to be really interested to, is that he had a lecture in Brazil, and he spoke about how important it is when you're going to coach, if you're a foreign manager trying to go into another country that you're not part of, you're not from there, it's very important for you to adapt to that culture of that country. And I'll repeat how important that is to you, my friend, is that the reason why right now a lot of Japanese fans, the former Algerian coach, Vahid Halu, I can't pronounce his last name.
Halilodzic, yeah.
A lot of those, from what I've been told when I was in Japan, that they don't like about him is that he's never adapted to the Japanese culture. He's not been part of that culture. So I don't know if he really did that with the Algerian team, and that's why maybe they blossom under him. But I think that's something that is so important that, and goes on to show what a character Carlos is, that how he believes that managers, if you're a foreign manager, coaching another country that you're foreign to, how important it is for you is to adapt and learn about the culture and be part of it, because that's the only way you could connect with the players. I'm not saying he speaks Farsi, but I'm saying that he's gotten to a point that he understands what Iranian football is and how he could overcome, the obstacles of how to talk to an Iranian player, and whether that's culturally, emotionally, or socially. And I think that shows you what kind of character he is. And another interesting, cool fact about Carlos Queiroz that a lot of people don't, he was actually one of the big mentors to Jose Mourinho, right now current Manchester United manager. He's a big name, and the work he's done in Iran is a revolution. A lot of players that you would never expect to leave Iran, they want to leave Iran so they could get a call up to the national team, because he's done something that says that, hey, I don't care where you play in Europe as long as you're getting first team minutes. And the work he's done for Iran for the past 7 years now, he's the first ever manager to take Iran to the consecutive World Cup, and he's right now considered Iran's greatest manager. And I'm not just exaggerating this to you, Mar. It's actually a lot of fans believe that, because there's a sense of unity amongst us, and Iran doesn't lose. Iran, from what I watch, it's very enjoyable to watch them, and a lot of fans, I think, like overseas or wherever they might be, that yes, they're Iranian football fans, but I think they're more willing to watch Iran now, because they're like, of what they saw, in 2014 when Iran almost could have defeated Argentina or even gotten a point, but unfortunately with Messi's brilliance when it came to the 94th minute, that's the kind of manager he is, that he'll shock you, and the beloved manager of Nigeria back in 2014, one of the interesting things he said was that Iran's greatest weapon is the person right next to me, Carlos Queiroz, and this is Iran's greatest weapon coming into this World Cup is going to be Carlos Queiroz. And it's more than 60 seconds, so I apologize for that, but just to give people a point is that, that this is why we're so passionate to talk about him and the work he's done, is because he's done with, you got to take into context with, with the politics within Iran, outside of Iran, with the lack of infrastructure, funding, and stuff, of how he's gotten the best out of those players, and I think
But
that
a lot of
shows
what
you.
you mentioned right
Yeah,
there is actually very, very, very relevant in North Africa right now.
yeah,
Tunisia had a string of, well, not a string, but they had at least a couple foreign coaches, and it was really the decision to bring back Nabil Maloul as a coach now was not really welcomed too much at the beginning. People were he was already the coach back in 2012 or 13, and people felt like we'd already seen that and done it. But what he's been able to do is they brought in a Tunisian manager, and he understands the psychology of these players, and he managed to get the best out of them. And again, it might sound like empty platitudes, but it really does mean something. It's something that I've observed very, very acutely. So, and it's the same thing in Algeria. That after having successive managers, Christian Gourcuff, who's the Frenchman's Frenchman, Milovan Rajevac, who couldn't speak a lick of English, French, or Arabic, and couldn't communicate with his players. George Likens, who is as charismatic as a shoe. We've finally come back and brought in the country's legend, Rabah Majer, who scored the Champions League final goal in 1987, who's an Algerian, who again understands the player psychology, and even Hervé Renard, going back to Carlos
yeah.
Queiroz and understanding the country's mentality. He's one of the few with Claude Leroy that will actually live in the country that they coach in, and that will. He's very, very wary of other European coaches that come to Africa for a paycheck. So that's across of North Africa. All these countries are sort of coming back to coaches who really understand player psychology and the culture that they're representing.
Right, and it goes on to show you why he's been so successful in Africa with the likes of Zambia and Ivory Coast. And
Exactly.
now the work he's doing with Morocco. Maher, let's now talk about Algeria. Right, obviously, I'm very disappointed to know that they're not going to be part because they're probably one of my favorite teams to watch under Vahid when they were playing in the World Cup, last World Cup. Very entertaining, that position style of football. You got some of the best talents in the world, playing for that team. But unfortunately, I just want to know why was it that didn't qualify? If you could tell us, the listeners, about that qualification process.
Pasha, honestly, I could write a thesis on it. It'd be 200 pages. It's very, very difficult to sort of compress that,
Right.
especially to one single point. There were many, many different reasons for it. But I would say if I were to sum it down to one word, it would be instability, and that's at all levels. So that's at the federation level, where for the first time we switched a federation president pretty much since the beginning of the 2000s, where the Mohamed Rara, he was the former president, and he was pretty much in charge the whole time. Even if there was another president in his place, he was running things for a good 15, 16 years. And after the 2017 Cup of Nations, he was pretty much, there was sort of, I don't want to say a witch hunt, but somebody else was preferred to him, another federation president, Khairuddin Zichi. So there was instability at the federation level, but there was especially instability at the coaching level. I believe we had 5 or 6 coaching changes within 12 months after Vahid left. And that was sort of really what drove the final nail into the coffin. Every 2-3 months, we had a different coach who had a different playing style, and the players could never really adapt very well. And there are, again, other factors. We have weak defending, maybe a lack of leadership. The supporters weren't at their best for every single match. There's really a whole host of reasons why Algeria didn't qualify. But what's for sure is that we were not better than Cameroon, and we were not better than Zambia or Nigeria. And Nigeria were in our group, and they looked incredible. And I think they're really going to surprise people at the World Cup. They're young, they're hungry, and they attack very, very well.
Right.
That's one team I'd tell you to keep your eye on.
Right. And now looking at, obviously when I watch Algeria with that position style of play, Iran is not going to have the ball against the likes of Portugal and Spain. That's just a fact, But how would you think it will benefit Iran with that style of play that Algeria will bring in?
Look, if this was 2-3 years ago and we were still playing under Christian Gourcuff, I would say perfect. That this is going to be like playing against. It's not going to be like playing against Spain, but you get my drift. That Algeria do play a possession heavy. They like to hold on to possession. They like to spread the pitch wide. They like to attack through the wings. But the main project of this new coach, Rabah Majer, has been to quote unquote Africanize the national team, which means bring club players that have played club competitions in Africa. That means rely on veterans. That means maybe not play the pretty game and leave yourself vulnerable to counterattacks. Maybe play the more Tunisian or Morocco style, pragmatic style of play. So he's only had one official match in charge, And Algeria haven't really been playing that pretty brand of football. But we haven't lost in 2 games. We've drawn one and we've won one technically. So it's very difficult to say how Algeria are going to line up, what they're going to do. Do they have technical players? Absolutely, yes they do. Are they going to have a coherent possession, pretty style of play? I'm not so sure. But if they do, then I think that'd be an excellent sparring partner for Iran.
I believe Iran is going to play Algeria and Austria, and I'm pretty sure Carlos Queiroz on purpose is going to play very defensively because, try to get the team more organized, as I would say, for the likes of Spain and stuff like that. But if you...
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
To have like one tactic for one opponent, Spain, and another tactic for Morocco, like be more open against Morocco, or do you think that's not that it'll confuse players, but maybe it'll set up bad habits for one player or another. Because Vahid Halilovic was very, very good at that. He implemented 2 different tactics before going to the 2014 World Cup. A counter-attacking tactic that we used against Belgium, and then a possession-based tactic that we used against the likes of South Korea and Russia. So, and I think we're the only team to use 21 out of 23 players out of our squad, or 20 out of 23 players. Only 1 outfield players and 2 reserve goalkeepers didn't play in the 2014 World Cup. So he really played to the strengths of every one of his players. So do you think that's a good thing if Queiroz sort of plays with different tactics in different matches?
No, of course. One of the hardest I feel for Carlos Queiroz is that when leading up to the qualification, Iran played more of a pragmatic, more open football, expansive. We weren't as much defensive because we know we are a much better team now, and so we could, with the group, we were more willing to attack, right? But unfortunately now with the group that we've got, and he has to more revert back to his old ways, if that makes sense, much more defensively, And now he has to get these players again to think in that approach. I mean, they're used to it, don't get me wrong. We still play a brilliant defensive game. But, how to be more compact because of the team we had 4 years ago with the likes of Argentina. It was much more easier, as I would say, to defend with them, if that makes sense. With the players we have now, is more we have more of an attacking style of play, And, people that are listening today could agree with me or disagree, but that's just, what I believe in, I would say right now, yes, because end of the day, as I've mentioned to you, Mar, is that the biggest issue right now that Queiroz has is that's why he's setting up a lot of camps for the Iranian players within Iran, is trying to bring their level up, their intensity, of the game up, because end of the day, if we're going to play the likes of Morocco, we got to give it all. Then we got the likes of Spain and Portugal. So imagine how exhausted these players are going to be, right? So he has to be willing to at least rotate maybe 1 or 2 players maximum, and that's and that goes back again to his man management. It's going to come down to him. So right now with a lot of the camps he's doing, from the pictures and everything, and we see a lot of these Iranian players, is that he's right now trying to test their fitness level, because at the end of the day, Iran has to be going up against 3 tough teams, and let's not forget it's considered the hardest group according to Grace Note in terms of ranking too, So yes, and that's something that Vahid succeeds in, and that goes on to show you why Algeria was blossoming during his tenure, was because of tactically and just of his man management thing. So I would say yes, Carlos Queiroz would always come with a plan, but it's very hard for me to say that if we are going to play with these teams, right? When is Iran going to burn out? If that makes sense, and it's going to come down to it because, yes, first game, we're going to give it all, but hopefully they can't be burning out against the like of Spain. Let's just put it this way, right? And so he's trying to bring the level of these players up, especially within Iran, and how to, immerse them with the European style, players that we have. But from what I've told you is that what kind of formation would you say that Algeria is going to play against Iran, and do you think Iran's defensively capabilities are going to hinder Algeria's match style of play?
So again, he's played a 4-4-3 in both matches. I expect him to play the same.
Okay.
It's going to be a conservative 4-4-3, not an all-out attacking 4-4-3. For example, when we played 4-4-3s in the past where we had 3 ball-playing central midfielders, and we've also had ones where we've had a central defender playing as a number 6 or as a defensive midfielder, as the water carrier. I think we're going to be looking more at like some kind of the ladder formation where it's a 4-3-3 with like almost a central defender playing as a defensive midfielder. Can Iran's defensive style of play hinder Algeria? Absolutely, they can. Algeria is a team in turmoil. I think there's very few teams, national teams, that have spiraled out of control as Algeria have in the last 2 years. It's almost been it's almost been confusing the way the way they've digressed. Sort of, it's really disturbing actually. But so absolutely, Iran can pose all kinds of threats, and they can win in Algeria, which was unfathomable 4 or 5 years ago. It's going to be interesting to see how many supporters do come out and support the national team, because whenever we have a full stadium, very few teams do get the better of us here in Algeria.
No. Hey, but thankfully it's going to be in Austria, so I don't know. Let's see what happens then.
Good point. But I do expect a lot of Algerians to come out. I think a lot of Iranians will come out too.
Yeah, you know how it is with Algerians and Iranians. But Maher, the last question I have for you is that, and obviously if there's any questions you might have for me or anything, actually 3 questions now, is that what would you say the score lines for these friendlies are going to be? And leading up to this is that, can you tell me about what your thoughts on Asian football are generally, and about the Iranian national team with the work Carlos Queiroz has done?
Right. So none of my answers are going to be really insightful here because it's so difficult to predict.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to predict what friendly matches are going to be. But I think, did you want me to predict for all 3, for the Morocco match included?
I mean, we're gonna have you on the Morocco match, so, but you could go ahead. It's fine.
I'm gonna say. Let me make a one prediction now and one prediction later. Then for that.
All right.
So I think against Tunisia, I think Tunisia are gonna win that match. I think it's gonna be a 1-0. Against Algeria, I think it's gonna be 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
And at the World Cup, I think it's gonna be 0-0 or 1-1. I think it's gonna be 1-1. Let's say at the World Cup. So I think Iran are gonna be very tough. I think all 3 national teams are going to struggle to break them down, and that's sort of the view I have of them, and I think most Algerians have of them. It's a very, very uneducated view, and I beg all of you listening to not take it seriously. But this is the sort of stereotype. This is how we see Iran here. We all, like, again, Kairos is very, very appreciated in Algeria, and I think all across Africa and all across the world as a global manager.
Yeah.
He's very well respected, but a lot of people are going to base their opinion of this Iranian team on what they saw in 2014, and sometimes that can be frustrating because the team can make lots of improvements. But then we saw, I don't want to say a negative team, but we saw a defensive team, and a team that could defend against any side, including Argentina and the great Lionel Messi. And I think we're going to, I heard that your defense was very good as well. During the qualifiers, were you guys undefeated?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, exactly. I heard that as well. So, it seems like it's going to be very difficult to beat Iran. And again, that's the style I have. It's a very general one. That's the idea I have in my head of your style of play. It's a very general one, very uneducated. But it seems like a club that's going to be very well coached with a tactician at its helm that are going to be difficult to break down, and that could that has enough attacking players to really hurt you. So it's probably, I think, one of the sides that you don't want in your group in a World Cup. But I still don't think that they're going to get out of the group stage. I'm sorry. I don't think Morocco or Iran will.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately with how the circumstances are, and a lot of Iranians do believe that. But then again, there's always that hope, and hopefully, you never know in football. But what happened 4 years ago with Argentina. But Maher, is there any last things that you would like to mention?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if your listeners do know, but Algeria did play Iran once before in 1991.
Yeah,
and it was actually I think it was called the Afro-Asian Cup of Nations or something like that. And it was the winner of the Africa Cup of Nations against the winner of the Asian Cup. So they would have a match between the 2 champions, and Algeria won that match 1-0. So I'm hoping for another nice 1-0 win come the 27th. But I also would like to send this petition out to all of our listeners and say, let's try to get that competition going again. I'm all for the third world rising up and creating our own footballing competitions, especially if the Europeans aren't going to like it.
Definitely, my friend, and that's what this podcast is trying to do. It's just not only trying to bring, more Iranians to know about the podcast and, trying to bring, but the whole community, as well. So we could learn more about, African football as much as you guys could learn more about, Asian football and Iranian football. Maher, thank you so much for coming on Gold Bazan. Obviously, you're a friend of the pod, and so we'll definitely have you on leading up to the World Cup when it comes to, officially who the 23-man squad is of Morocco and whatnot. And if you could just tell folks where they could find you.
Mostly on Twitter. I write for anybody that'll pay, so you can find my articles online if you Google my name. But on Twitter, it's at Mezahi Maher, which is my name. So Mezahimaher. Thanks for having me on. Have a good night.
And that concludes our discussion with Maher Mezahi, a fantastic individual. It was great to get his insight about Tunisia and Algeria. We'll definitely have him on more, especially leading up to the World Cup when we want to talk about Morocco. Folks, please, subscribe to us on iTunes ratings. It really, truly helps us for other people to know about such a thing exists, and all we're trying to do is trying to bring everybody together as one. It's a very global international podcast, and to just get the word about Iranian football, the word of mouth by itself helps a lot, crucially. So appreciate everyone. You can follow us on Facebook, Golbazan, Twitter, Golbazan. Check out our website, and if for any reason you guys wanted to send us an email or anything you want to discuss, please feel free to do so. The email is mail@golbazanpodcast.com, and if for whatever reason, various reasons, you guys want to personally send any director or anybody a personal email, if you go on the website and check out the About Us section, you could find all the emails and everything about all the people involved with Golbazan. Thank you so much.